So,
Okay.
hi, Aidan. How are you?
Hi, Rossi. I'm okay. How are you?
Great.
All right. So, I don't really know how to go about this, but I'm just gonna go with what I have. So,
Yeah, go for it.
all right. So, obviously, we're talking about these five paintings that you made, and the questions that I had for them. I wanted to start off with my first question was just for you to introduce yourself. So, I wanted to know who you were and your background.
Sure. So, my name is Rosita Todorova. Most people call me Rossi. I'm originally from Bulgaria. I was born in Bulgaria and immigrated to the United States when I was a child in the early 90s. And I grew up in Reno, Nevada. And I got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the University of Nevada, Reno, and then my Master's of Fine Arts from Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. And I'm a visual artist that works in painting, drawing, and installation. I also dabble in books and book forms. And I teach at Truckee Meadows Community College, where I'm a full time studio arts instructor and have been there since 2018.
Great. Thank you so much for giving me a lot of detail about yourself.
You got
Um,
it.
so, with that, I have questions about these pieces specifically. So, I wanted to know, I guess, firstly, um, just so it makes more sense, were you inspired by past experiences or anything specifically when you created these pieces?
Yeah. So this series of work is in a continuation with like a thinking that I have had from previous pieces. So I've been working a lot with ideas of time. So how we experience time, how we uh, kind of relate to time, and how time like how time like feels within our current environment. So most of my work has been associated with that, and in terms of also the idea of place. So the way that I often talk about it is, if you were to imagine like a journey, like everything from going to the grocery store to taking a trip, and you were to imagine that whole flow of experience from your front door to your destination, and if you were to compress that visually, like what would it look like? And so when you think about that, it's all about location and also what happened in terms of time. So that's kind of the way that I'm thinking about work. And in these pieces, I was really interested in in thinking and creating more traditional landscapes. And in landscape and thinking about a traditional landscape, which is often idealized, where the land that you're looking at looks majestic or untouched. Within that framing of a traditional landscape, there's also a capture of these multiple levels of time. And so the way I think about that is that as we look at a landscape, we think about the past. We remember the last time we happened to be at that place. It might be something that's memorializing a event that had happened there over in the past. When we're also out in nature, it's one of the only times that we actually get to be in the present, and we get to um, like think about what's happening in the moment, and like being in the moment, kind of unplugging from our very technical and technology driven um, society. And also, a landscape is showing you the future, like literally by showing you a vista and like what's up ahead, and that this journey or this road or whatever that vista is in front of you could be where you're headed. So it's also presenting this idea of time into the future. And um, why the reason why I was interested in this idea of landscape is because it shows these three ideas of time, but also that within us thinking about that, we're also placing a lot of ourselves um, onto this landscape. Like it's really those experiences end up not really being about the location itself or its like its desires, its beauty, but instead how we see it, what we're bringing to it. And so I'm using these like reflective mylar strips or these like ribbons and kind of directional roads or little journeys that are created with color to start to discuss and talk about how we're placing a lot of ourselves in that experience between us and the landscape, and that is really becomes a reflection of our experience rather than that location on its own, again within this idea of time.
Right.
So longer explanation for that spiel, the thinking behind the work. Did you did I answer your specific question?
Yeah, you actually answered a few of my
That's
questions.
okay. We can I can go further within them as you like keep asking your questions because I think I can probably dive further into them.
Okay. Um, One of the questions that I had for a while, regarding these works is, w- what do you want the silver leaf to represent within this work? Is this like what we're taking in from the environment, or what exactly does it mean within the work?
Yeah, so there it's a really good question. So I'm really interested in silver leaf and its reflective quality. So not what I one way I'm using it is very formally, to where I'm painting something that's reflective, but I'm also putting a reflective element into the painting. And so there's this like double like layer of reflection that's happening. One is done through the painting itself, but one's done through the material itself. And I really am excited about how you interact with these pieces. So as you walk up next to them, they reflect you. So there's just this ability for not for you to see yourself in it, but basically like it reflects your shadow, it reflects your presence.
Hmm.
As you walk by them, they change because of the lighting in the room of you interacting with them and walking by them. And so I'm really interested in that element that you kind of like put your like I put you in the painting by using this reflective material. Um, but if we like dig intellectually deeper, and I've made work a little bit about this in the past, is um, yeah, there's a lot of history, mostly in Nevada, when it comes to ideas of silver and ideas of like us mining and extracting things out of our natural environment for profit, right? And so that history of silver in Nevada, I think, can be also another layer to the work itself, and in thinking about like value and like how do you create value and how does the landscape have value? How does land have value? Even how do these image have value by me placing something that's more precious and onto their service than just paint?
Thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Um, I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
So I noticed within these pieces, there's some uh, the ribbons that you used. There's some that are like very like flowing in the wind, and there's some that seem more like they're more like on top of themselves. They aren't like
Mhm.
flowing freely. Is there a meaning behind that, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I have to say, I mean, I can tell you that the first one of the first pieces in this entire series was actually the one with the red ribbon, where I was like breaking the picture plane in a slightly different way, where the linen is showing in the upper right hand corner, and so I really liked this idea of like breaking the picture plane and starting to use that ribbon to create like a second or third frame within the image itself. And like this idea of like framing something and then creating a almost like a line to say like focus here, think about here, like let me point you to this direction. But then also like playing with this idea of optical space of like where does the painting start, where does the material start, like where I liked that I could break that frame. Um, but then what happened, and I this was like the plan, is that I started to take these mylar ribbons into the desert to photograph them in environment. And I started to use a mirror for them to be attached to, and then take that mirror with the mylar attached to it out into the desert and create photographs. And so it slightly changed how I started to use these colorful uh, ribbons and in the series that was also associated with this bigger body of work. Um, and at times they basically got replaced by the like these silver filaments that are done with the silver leaf. But in these four pieces specifically, that these like colorful ribbons are still in there. And part of the way that I was thinking about them, or how I've used them in the past, this idea of like a almost like a flat band of color that is either going deep in pictorial space or breaking the pictorial space, is that they are some part of a journey, so that they're some part of a road or a connection to something that's still happening or is happening like in the past. So for example, in the pink one, you can almost imagine yourself coming over that hill and following that path, like even if your physical path was on a road, I feel like our almost like spiritual path would have like taken us through the clouds and bent around that form, and like and come back and connected us back to where we were. So it's almost like a directional point of like we came from here, kind of guiding your view into something that might be out of sight. Um, Within this red one, this one actually has a very like personal story with it that I don't sometimes I wonder how much to reveal, but things happen as you're painting. I mean, like, why not? So things happen as you're painting. And as I was making this piece, I added this red line um, almost after the piece was almost finished. And I was on a phone call while making a lot of this painting with a girlfriend of mine who was very like in deep conversation about having a conversation about not being able to have children. So like a very like deep and emotional conversation about um, like basically failing at fertility and uh, hoping and wishing and working on fertility through IVF. And at like towards the end of our conversation, I just really felt like this piece needed this like red line that went through this ribbon, in a way to be like for me, like in that moment, it was about how fertility can be described as being like this, feminine red, like associated with childbearing, and how it was possible. Like I kind of like threw this possibility in here that like that circle was not going to be empty, that there was this red line that still went through it. And um, like not to put too much of it's not really hindsight being 2020, but the cool thing is that about a month after I finished this piece, the same girlfriend called me back and told me that they had just gotten pregnant. And in many ways, I was telling her, I'm like, this, like, I was thinking about you when I was painting this piece, and I was kind of like wishing this for you. So, not to like turn it into a talisman or like kind of dismiss its, like, I don't want to say that, like, by putting it in the painting, this thing happened. But that's what I think about every time I see this piece now, is that this circle or this ribbon would have otherwise basically been empty, and I interrupted it with this red line, um, like wishing for this fertility, and amazingly enough, it happened. So I think that they can mean different things at different moments, but they're usually connected to like personal experience or story or road or this idea of like a journey, even if it's a journey like this, just like a human interaction that's connected to a conversation that leads into something else.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. It's so wonderful to know that.
Yeah, yeah, and they're doing really well. Like
I'm
they're baby and mom are doing well.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. To finish this up, I just have one more question for you, and it's a really relatively simple one, I guess. I was just wondering, do you intend on, I guess it's kind of a two-parter. So do you intend on continuing to work with this, I guess, this theme, and do you intend on continuing this kind of series with these ribbons?
Yeah. So, yes, I actually think that this is like I'm just kind of scratching the surface with this work, and the way that I'm thinking about them next, and the way that they kind of started to go within the first piece, that Rain on the Horizon piece, is that I'm thinking about these ribbons, and again, this idea of what we bring to a landscape as a way of thinking about what we memorialize, like what we want to create, like how we create memory, how we create monument, how we create this idea of what we're going to note and create as important in the future, and how for most of us as individuals that our memorials are fleeting. Like our attempt to capture not only the like meaning of a location, but even an individual or an experience within that location are never going to have like a granite or marble sculpture, like sitting there to memorialize it. But instead, it's something um, that is, truly momentary or might be only within our minds or within being present and then like leaving. And so um, I am continuing to think and explore that idea. And I'm really, thinking and planning on ways how I can do that further with both video and sculpture out into the desert that is temporary and documented through video as well as through this through painting, and more paintings that are associated with those photos and videos.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of ideas with this then, and I
I
can't
do.
wait. I can't wait to
Yeah.
see your future work.
Yeah, and I have an exhibition at Sierra Nevada University in February of 2021. So just this coming February, and yeah, so I'm hoping that as people are interested, they can come and see that work. And of course, this work, these five pieces are on display at Truckee Meadows Community College in the main gallery as part of the annual faculty exhibition. And I'm also going to be doing a project with the Lily in around January, where I've been invited to react to an exhibition that they'll have of a surrealist feminist artist or female artist. Um, and so more information on that as it comes to fruition. So those are just some things that are coming up.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Um, Before we finish this, I just want to show some close-ups of these works since I didn't get the opportunity to earlier, or I just didn't
Sure.
want to interrupt you. So I'll just go
Yeah.
through them.
And I don't
So
think I said this, but in these, the landscape is all from my own personal photography. And usually that photography is like not very good. So they're like photos taken from the passenger seat of the car as we're, driving up to Truckee or, like somewhere around Reno or going out camping. And in these, I've gotten to like idealize them, like in the beauty that I saw in these pieces when I took that photo. And so a lot of the images that you see are, references to places and locations here in the high desert of northern Nevada or close proximity.
you didn't mention that, so, thank you for
Yeah.
adding that
I
little
feel like
detail.
it was in your first question, and I didn't answer
Yeah,
that.
it's okay. Alright, well, thank you so much for, letting me interview you about these pieces.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thank you for doing it.
Of course.
All
Alright.
right. Thank you, Aiden.
Yep. Thank you for recording it.